Hello and welcome to the Intuitive Websites webinar on Rising Above the Digital Noise, a proven process for inbound marketing. I'm going to share my screen with everyone and we're going to get started. A couple things that I want to keep you aware of as we get through the webinar is that you can certainly submit your questions to me as they come up and as I present. And when I have a stopping point in between the slides, I'll jump in and answer your questions. And also make sure you check out our upcoming events and sign up for our email newsletter so we can stay in touch with you on new events that are coming up. So let me share my screen and I'll jump right into the presentation. The goal of today's presentation is to talk about inbound marketing, and it goes by different names. It can be called inbound marketing, content marketing, attraction marketing. This is the process of drawing people to you through an infinite audience of one person. And I love this graphic from HubSpot because it really visually represents that. In the old days of marketing, we'd try to reach lots of people. Even if those people were segmented, we'd still try to reach a large group of people. In today's world of digital marketing and inbound marketing, we have interactions with individuals who come and look at your content and experience your brand. And you have the capacity to reach the entire world through your marketing. So because of this and because of the power of inbound marketing now, it's going to require you to think differently about how you market. And every month and every week and every year that goes by, it gets more intense in how we need to do this. And this is the focus of this presentation is on the tactics and techniques we need to implement to make this happen. Just want to review some information to kind of tee up the presentation a little bit here. And this is, once again, information from HubSpot. HubSpot monitors the effectiveness of inbound marketing. And they see that companies that put effort into this inbound marketing get a better return. And in fact, companies that do this and that measure their return are growing faster than companies that don't. And I think once you get into the presentation today, you'll see exactly why that happens. It'll make sense to you. And in fact, let's talk about what you're going to learn today. So really, the top thing I want you to understand is that you have to use inbound marketing to attract qualified prospects to you, or direct sales if you're an e-commerce website. And you have to do this through improvements in your digital brand, through excellent content, and through pulling together and teaching your staff and your marketing team how to become content leaders on the internet. So that draws people to you. We're going to cover 4 areas today. I'm going to talk about 4 new laws of sales and marketing, 10 rules of content marketing implementation, and then I'm going to give you some excellent content marketing resources. And I'll be providing resources throughout the presentation so you can get a sense of how they're used. Now, I do have to mention the 4-step process before we jump into this. And we have another webinar that is strictly on the 4-step process and on the book Winning the Website War. This 4-step process is fundamental for you to understand before you gear up your inbound marketing. If the 4-step process is not in place for your website and your digital marketing, your social media, then what will happen is your inbound marketing might be off message. Your strategy might not be in tune. So I encourage everybody who's watching this webinar to watch the first webinar on Winning the Website War, the 4-step process, or pick up a copy of my book on Amazon and get this foundational part done. So when we start talking about traffic generation, which is step 3, you'll have this strategy in place and you feel like you have your design, your usability, and everything in place as well. So let's jump right in and look at law number 1. Customers research and find you. The principle behind this law, the first law of inbound marketing, is that the internet has trained people now to go find what they want. It's basically a self-service culture where people figure out, this is what I want. I'm going to go research it, get the information I need, maybe get some testimonials or talk to some other folks. But once I make the decision, then I'll reach out and buy from this company. And that turns marketing on its head, right? Because in the old days, a salesperson would contact you and attempt to make a sale. Now customers research and find you. And what we want to understand is that about half of the people that research your company will be doing it on Google. And Google is still a critical part of digital marketing. Even though social media websites are grabbing users away and more people are interacting with the internet via social media and not going to Google, Google's still a major player. And this data from Google Insights really drives this home that people are researching you before they buy, and they're using mobile. We're going to talk about that in a second. And also, the growth for this is in B2B. We know that consumers are certainly using the internet to purchase, confirm their purchases, and even before they go shopping in a retail store, they research online. But the growth is really happening in B2B. And here's more data from Google that supports that. This data shows that industrial manufacturers, suppliers, and pack and ship companies are more and more going to Google to research their vendors before they engage with them. And in different categories, we see the same increase. And I've been watching this data for over 15 years now with my work with Google and my work at Intuitive Websites, and we've seen this is continuing to grow. This data is provided by Google, by the way, through Google Insights. There's additional data coming through from companies like Clutch now, which are showing that business audiences and business decision makers more and more are going to the internet to research your company before they purchase. Now, not only are they researching your company, they're going to get educated. And what the internet does is it gives you the ability to be their source of education. So if you think about this for a second, when someone goes out and researches a solution to a business problem, and your website is the site they keep going back to for that solution, you're in a much better position to become that supplier, that vendor, that partner, because they're going to more than likely choose you, or at least you'll be included in their sales process. And what's really fascinating is that the better and the stronger your niche is, the better the results that you'll see. And what I mean by that is the better you are as a unique supplier and a unique service provider, these numbers increase even more. And that's because when people are researching, they're looking for things that are very, very specific to solve their problem. Now, as I talk about this concept of researching, I want to help you with a mind shift. And that mind shift has to go from, this is what the old sales funnel used to look like, the old marketing and sales funnel, which was the idea that companies needed to go out and prospect and find leads and find prospective customers. And they did that with a sales team, with a telemarketing team, even with aggressive email marketing. But the impetus was on the company to go find customers and generate those leads. And then those customers would be qualified in a sales process, and a sales rep would move them through to the close. And then you had sales reps that were better at prospecting and sales reps that were better at closing. It's hard to find a rep that can do both those things. This is the old sales funnel. It was around for a long, long time. The internet drove the creation of a new funnel. And every year, this funnel gets more intensive, more necessary, and applicable to more and more prospects. And this is the idea that your marketing efforts and your digital marketing efforts drive lead generation. So you're not out going shaking the trees to find customers. You're setting up content and approaches in digital that bring them to you, and that generates the inquiries. Now, when they do inquire at this point, because they've researched, they are ready for a targeted presentation. They've already looked at your content. In many cases, the person that has been researching your business may know more about that specific solution than the sales rep. And this is what the internet has done. So when you present and when you start to put your proposals and your contracts together and so forth, they have to be highly targeted. They have to be very unique to that targeted research that the prospect has done. And if you do that, you have a much better chance of closing. This is the new sales funnel, attracting people to your business. Now, as you think about, well, what do I have to do to get people, to find me and to attract them to me? I want you to think about a second mindset here, which is the idea that you're going to become an online publisher and thought leader. And the fundamental rules behind this are that you're helping people understand the value and benefit you provide to them, the very specific value and benefit you provide to them. You write and talk in the language of the customer, so they have a very direct connection with you, and it's very easy for them to understand what you're saying and very easy for them to contact you. Think about yourself as a publisher, and then think about yourself reaching out to other influencers in the industry that have the attention of your target market and spreading content to them. When you think structurally about how to get this done, I want to introduce a book to you. It's a fantastic book called Building a Story Brand. And this book really says it well when you start to think about the structure behind content. And I'm going to talk a little bit about who should be writing the content, because it's probably not you and it may not be someone at your business. But this story brand can provide direction for content writers and becomes the foundation for how you want to write. And here is how it starts. And the Story Brand book has 7 key functions. And if you don't read the book, then I'm going to give them to you now in the next couple minutes, so you'll have them. The number one area is that the focus of your content is always the hero of your story. And the hero of your story is always your customer, your prospective customer. Most marketing companies, in fact, the majority of marketing companies, make the hero of the story the company, their business, their solution, their services. And for the most part, prospective customers kind of deal with that. You know, they know that it's there and they deal with it. But customers really love to see when the hero of the story is them, and when you're talking their language and solving their problem. And they do have a problem, and that's number 2, and that's why they come to you. They come to you to solve a very specific problem. The best marketing companies in the world understand prospective customers' problems and how to solve them. And in fact, they become a guide to solving that problem. And that guide has a plan. They have a very specific solution and a very specific approach to solve that problem. And they have a very clear call to action so that the hero can see, hey, this is how I sign up. This is how I get your products and services. And it's going to avoid failure for me, and it's going to end in success. This is the 7-step process. So when you write content, these are fundamental rules that content needs to follow. And the better you do this, the more leads you'll come through and the more prospects you'll see for your services and products. And a key resource in all this is the content marketing calendar. And there's lots of tools out there that help you with content marketing calendars. In fact, all the major SEO tools and inbound marketing tools are adding content calendar functionality to their app. And they're doing it because it is so critical. It's so important that you plan out your content for all the different areas that you're going to post, and that you have this strategically ready to go month in and month out. And we're going to talk more about that as well. And there's different ways to do a content calendar, from the app approach, which we saw before, to a simple calendar where you write up, this is how I want to see our blogs and email and so forth going out. And when you have it visually in front of you like this, you can get a sense of the timing and the cadence for different types of content. For example, if you're talking about events one week, the next week you might want to talk about a new product. The next week you might want to talk about a case study or a testimonial or a customer story. And the next week you might want to talk about something that's new in the industry and some tips and techniques and so forth. So you want to keep that variety going, and the content calendar helps you visually see how that's going to work. The frequency really depends on the marketplace. So the larger the marketplace and the more consumers in your marketplace, the higher the frequency, because things go below the fold in Facebook really quick, and social media posts can disappear really quick. The more specific and niche you are with the smaller target market, and the more B2B focused you are, the more careful you have to be with your frequency. You don't want to overwhelm people with too much of the same thing, right? So the frequency depends on your strategy and depends on your marketplace. It can get complicated when you think about who's going to do this work and who's going to implement this calendar. And I'm not going to go into great detail in this webinar on the team that does this, but I just want you to keep in mind that it can take a team of 4 or 5 people to make this happen. What I do want to focus on is the content writer, because you can't do anything without a writer. The content writer should be someone that is specifically assigned content for your company and is trained as a writer. More than likely, you'll have to go outside your company to find this person. There's great websites out there like Writers Access that can provide those services. Law number 2 is the concept of building a loyal following. So once you've attracted people to you, Now what we want to do is make them loyal, keep them attracted. And it's not as difficult to do as it used to be because people want to be loyal to a brand. There's so many options on the internet right now. Why not reduce those options and be that person's loyal customer, have that person be your loyal customer? They don't want to have to go back out and start over and research a new firm. They want to be loyal to you. And this is real important to understand because of how busy people are. And if you want to rise above the noise, loyalty is the key to doing that. And of course, you have to build loyalty through excellent products and services, which I'm going to assume that you have. But bringing people to your company, having them find you on the internet, and then keeping them loyal to you is absolutely critical to growing and sustaining your company. Keep in mind, people are moving quick around the internet. They're scanning and reading on portable devices. They want something that's easy to read, easy to connect with them, and then easy to convert with. They also are very skeptical of anything that looks like marketing content, stuff that is more about sizzle than it is about value. And so the kind of fundamentals of marketing that we've discussed need to be very present to attract people and to keep them loyal. I want to talk just a little bit about what keeps them loyal with your content. And there's two awesome books that talk about this. The first one is Why Things Catch On. And this is basically the results of Jonah Berger doing lots and lots of research on what causes content to really take off and happen. And these are the 6 areas that make that happen. So when you think about your content calendar, when you think about how you're going to distribute content in your email and so forth, you have to touch on these 6 areas on a regular basis. And the better you can do this, the better you can, make your content follow in these areas, the higher the chances that content will get shared and that it will be distributed around the internet. And more importantly, that it will keep people loyal to you. The second book is Made to Stick. And if you look, these 6 are in some ways similar to the previous book, but once again, Chip and Dan Heath did a ton of research to find out, how is content shared and distributed and how does it become popular? And this is what it does. And these slides are great to share with your writers and with your marketing team, and they can become the staples, right, and the guideposts for people that are writing content. Building a loyal following includes staying in touch with folks. And the best way to do that is through email marketing. Now, all of these different approaches that you see on the slide here are needed in some cases because your target market has a preference for how they take in internet content. And those preferences can vary widely. And for example, let's start with email newsletters. Now, if you have an email newsletter, it could be fantastic, right? And it should be fantastic. People read it and share it, can't wait to get it, right? Should be distributed at least monthly. Those email newsletters are only going to get read by about 30% of your list. And if you get to 40%, you're doing fantastic. But a good 50 to 60% of people will just never get your email newsletter. It'll either be filtered, it won't be read, it'll be deleted. They just won't get to it. So you have to look at other sources for those folks. And that's why you have to not only understand where people take in your content, but make sure you have a plan to distribute it through multiple channels so you can reach everybody. Key resource for doing that is MailChimp. And you must have a CRM as well, too. We're not going to get into CRMs, but CRMs like Salesforce and so forth are absolutely critical to staying in touch with people and building a loyal following. We prefer MailChimp. We think it's fantastic. Works great with WordPress websites, integrates with pretty much every CRM that's out there, and has a great bang for the buck. You really can't beat it for email marketing. Law number 3, and I've touched on this a little bit, but it's the power of simplicity. So if you want to rise above the noise, you have to keep it more simple and more valuable than your competitors. In fact, I encourage you to do this exercise. Go look at your competitors and ask this question. How can we add more value than they do? And how can we keep it more simple than they do? And how can you be more awesome on your homepage than they are? And you're usually going to be awesome by keeping it simple. And in fact, looking at Google's website, which is probably the most valuable website on the planet, It's a very simple website. And underneath this very simple website is lots and lots of content, millions of pages, right? But the homepage is very simple and direct. It has a very clear intent and a very clear focus. Your homepage needs to do the same thing. Want to touch on the fact that simplicity takes courage, right? It takes courage to eliminate. It's lazy, actually. It's lazy marketing to add more stuff. Courage, though, is driven by strategy. In fact, the right strategy should give you the confidence to have courage, to keep your site simple. And think about the 10 out of 10 rule. In fact, ask yourself this question in your digital marketing. Will 10 out of 10 people that look at this web page or this content or whatever digital platform you're on, will 10 out of 10 people get it? Will they get the message? Will they understand it? Would they be able to refer someone who needs that solution? These things are critical because simplicity is going to drive conversions and sales. One of the ways that simplicity expresses itself is through your tagline. And I've worked with hundreds of companies and reviewed thousands of websites, and the homepage tagline is always a key area that we have to look at. Here are some pointers on that. And we have a lot of content on our website about website taglines and so forth, but use concrete words, be very direct, focus on the benefit, make the customer the hero of the story with your tagline, and make sure it beats that 10 out of 10 rule. A great resource for these things I've just talked about is Steve Krug, which is the book Don't Make Me Think, and the concept of user testing. And this is the idea where you put someone in front of your website and you ask them to do things. You don't ask for opinions. You don't ask for general feedback. Ask them to go to your website, research your company, and contact you. Ask them something simple like that. Ask them to go to Google and make a buying decision about your company and your services. This is great feedback. Very few companies do this, and it can become a competitive advantage for you if you do some user testing. Law number 4, content must be mobile ready. And let's jump into this a little bit more. Content now has really hit over 50%. So more than half of the folks on the internet are experiencing it through their mobile devices. In B2B, it's approaching 50%. I think there are lots of B2B marketplaces now where it's over 50%. We see that in Google Analytics data for our customers. So when you think about mobile, you have to think about how is your content experienced on a mobile device? And just to give you some feedback on how people use mobile, and people actually, how they use the internet in general for content. People like to scan first. They like to scan headlines and taglines and images with captions, right? So they scan first. Then they'll dive in for more information and get deeper. And when they do that, it's okay to have lots and lots of content. I think that the idea that, well, we've got to have something on mobile and we've got to make sure we don't overwhelm people with lots of content. It's not lots of content that's the issue. It's how the content is organized that's the issue. One of the most popular websites in the world is Wikipedia. And Wikipedia has lots of pages, millions of pages. No one would ever say, take down content, Wikipedia, you have too much. No, what Wikipedia is all about is organizing the content to be found in Google search. And people read Wikipedia sites on their mobile devices all the time. So think about that for your website. How can you organize your content for mobile? How can you organize your content so people can scan, bounce around at pages, look at a few headlines and photos, then dive in for more information? Your website must have a responsive design. And here's an example of responsive design. So the website adapts to whatever screen size it's being seen on by the user. The screen size can vary from a tiny phone to a huge projector in front of an audience of 1,000 people. The website has to adapt to all those different screen sizes, and that's called responsive design. The good news is WordPress themes do this. They do it automatically when you purchase the theme and build your website out. We recommend definitely using WordPress themes to build your website. In fact, we build in WordPress at Intuitive Websites. It takes all the coding out of putting together a website, and these are awesome themes. This resource right here, the Envato Marketplace, has incredible themes. So those are the four laws. I want to jump now into the 10 rules of content marketing. So to implement these 4 laws, you have to be excellent at content marketing, and that's going to be the oxygen of inbound marketing, right? Without content, there's nothing that's going to happen. You can't do it with graphics and photos alone. You have to have the content. And by the way, I want to make the point too that content does include audio, video, and written content, and also graphical content as well. This is all part of content. Before I jump into these 10 rules, I want to make a case for this. I want you to understand why you're doing this. One of the things I like to tell the audiences I present to is that content lasts forever. So in the old days of advertising marketing, you'd have a TV commercial that would run for a few weeks, a billboard that would be placed for a few weeks, an ad in a newspaper maybe that would run for a few weeks, and then it's done and gone, never to be seen again. Well, with the internet, content is now permanent, and especially content on blogs and web pages. Advertising content can still be removed, but the content I'm talking about is permanent. And this content has been proven to have much higher conversion rates than any kind of ads. So let's talk about rule number 1. And this is the most important rule, because if you don't write for your reader will go somewhere else. And like I said, I mentioned writer's access. I want to talk about how you can implement a writer into your company. So professional writers can write on any topic. In fact, they can write on your business's topics better than you can, better than anyone at your company. You want to find a great writer, engage them, and train them on your business, your marketplace, and then watch the excellent content start to flow. That content should be written for the reader, and a great writer knows to do that. A great writer will always ask, who's the audience? Hire a great writer, write your content for the reader, for your target market. Number 2, use this content to get found in Google. So if you're writing for the reader, if you're writing in the language they understand, then that content's more likely to get that reader to your site through their Google searches. The best resource for this is the Google Search Console. Setting up the Google Search Console allows you to see the search terms people are using to find your website. And it's also a way of communicating with Google and letting them know that your site is not a spam site, that you are a legitimate website with legitimate content. You're looking to get indexed in Google, and you want to start a communication with the Google spiders that you can track and monitor through the Google Search Console. It's one of the most important elements of inbound marketing. All of the major SEO tools that are out there get their data from the Google Search Console. So along with Google Analytics, you must set up the Google Search Console. And here's what it looks like. This is actually what we call the classic version. There's a new version that's out, but I still prefer the classic version because it's simple and clean. But the navigation on the left side gives you the opportunity to get more data and information. And the feedback you see in the dashboard tells you the visitors, and it tells you how well you're communicating with the Google spiders. This page, which comes out of the Google dashboard under Search Analytics, is the only place you can go to see the actual searches done in Google that displayed your website, showing you clicks, impressions, and the position you have in Google. If you work with this data and work to improve this data, you will see sales increase for your company. I want to back up a little bit more of what I'm saying by some content here from Google Insights. This is coming from Google. And basically what Google is saying is that you have more pages on your website and you get more visitors. And the more targeted those pages are, the more qualified the visitor is. Now, when I present this slide in my presentations, people will say to me generally, well, how is it possible that we can get this many pages on our website? It is possible. Other companies have done it, and you start with the first page, you start with the second page, and you start with the third page, and you make it a part of your digital marketing process. Over the course of months and years, you will get to hundreds of pages, if not thousands of pages. And of course, you may have to hire a content writer to help with this as well. Let's go to rules 3 and 4. So understand that the content you're providing must be consistent, it must be strategic, and then it becomes a voice of your brand. If you don't have one voice for your brand, if you have multiple approaches to content and you're bouncing around all over the place, then you're going to have brand confusion and dissonance. And that lowers trust, makes your website more complicated, makes your digital marketing more complicated, and drives people away. So think about this strategically and make sure you have a constant and consistent voice for your brand. One way to think strategically about this is number 4 here, which is the idea of translating what you already do well to your content. If you stay focused on that, then you're doing great branding. And I think the resource to answer these 2 questions about how do you make this happen is your customers. Talking to your customers and getting feedback. The better you know and understand their needs, the better you can meet these 2 rules, 3 and 4. Number 5, make content a competitive advantage. Absolutely. I mentioned this earlier. Writing regular WordPress blog posts that are spot on, that have great value, is a great way to build a competitive advantage. And don't worry about other people copying you. It's extremely difficult for someone to copy these strategic content approaches because, number one, not only do they not have the time and the resources to do this, the other thing is they probably don't even know you're doing it. They're not going to be attracted to this content like your prospective customers. And newer and younger demographics coming in to see your brand, if they don't see this content, they're going to feel like you're hiding value, especially if someone else is providing it. So don't hide that value. Write great content and become a content leader. It'll draw people to your company. Number 6, write great headers and taglines. I mentioned how people bounce around on websites. The better and more concrete and direct your headers and taglines are, the better job you will do of pulling people in. And you can communicate in layers, which is the idea that once you do pull them in, they can see 1,000 pages of information. I mean, and users will love that, and so will Google. And when we do user testing and when we bring people in and put them on websites, that's how they use the website. They bounce around and look at headers and taglines, and then they like to get into deep content and learn more, especially right before they make a purchase decision. A great resource for this is a website called screamingfrog.com. And what you do at Screaming Frog is you can export your website into a spreadsheet, and it can show you every single page and every single element on that website and how it's organized and how it's set up for SEO. Headers, by the way, are a key SEO function as well. They're called H1, H2, and H3 tags, and excellent headers will improve your SEO. Screaming Frog can show you how you're communicating in layers and how you're using headers and taglines. All right, 8 and 9. Let's take a look here at these. And I want to just stress how important it is to have a caption with your photo. And once again, in user testing, if you don't have a caption with your photo, then 10 out of 10 users will make up their own story about why that photo's there. So let me say that again. If you have a photo on your website without a caption, then every single individual user will make up their own story as to why that photo's there. And it's very likely that they won't make the connection that you want them to make. Having a tagline or a caption with that photo bridges that gap. Photos are the most common thing looked at on the internet, by far. Photos are the most common element looked at on the internet. It's the same way we look at newspapers and magazines. It's the same way we scan and look at things on the internet. Number 9 is the concept of watching your ROI. You can do this through Google Analytics. You can do this through monitoring conversions and monitoring inquiries, and it should be a critical part of content marketing. You can certainly watch this grow over time, watch the traffic increase, and your best resource for this is, by the way, Google Analytics. And ROI is very straightforward and easy to measure, because once you know your average order and you know how many leads you're getting, you can run the numbers and figure out what your ROI is going to be on all this content marketing efforts. Here's a screen grab of Google Analytics. Most people have seen this or been exposed to it, but This is the Google Analytics overview page, which is my favorite page. It gives you a really nice summary of traffic on your website. It also talks about the bounce rate and the engagement with the site, how much time they spend on the site, whether they're new visitors or recurring visitors. It's fantastic information for you to have, and it really drives the ROI. Okay, number 10, let's talk about the culture of inbound marketing. None of this will go anywhere unless it comes from the top, and it is something that you make as a cultural part of your company. And the reason it won't go anywhere is because this is hard work. It's hard work to implement these things. So if you think it's going to happen because you've given some people a few tasks to get a blog written, it won't. It has to be culturally driven through your company. And for something like this to really take hold, you have to have educational resources and you have to train people on this. And the best resource for content marketing training is the Content Marketing Institute. They have a fantastic daily newsletter that is the best thing I've ever seen for training folks on content marketing. Hire people that believe in this, measure the ROI, and talk about it in your marketing meetings, and it'll become part of what you do culturally. So to start the process of implementing this, I'm going to talk about this briefly in a few slides. And by the way, you can have these slides if you email me directly, tom@intuitivewebsites.com. I'll send you a copy of them. I'm not going to go through every bullet point and every checklist here in the slides, but I do want to cover with you a few things that need to get taken care of as you implement inbound marketing. The key thing about the types and channels is knowing what is the preference of your prospective customer. Where would they want to find you, and where do they prefer to get content? Now the key challenge here is that you probably aren't going to cover all these areas, right? It's too much. But if you understand the top 5 or the top 3 that are important to your target market, focus on those. That's a great start. And then over time, you can expand into other areas, and Google will love you because all of these things that you see here on this page are indexed by Google. And Google loves websites that have a variety of ways to engage with the reader and with the website searcher. And so if you know what kind of channels you want to go after, then you have to be thinking about, well, what are some topics? What can we write about? And your content writer that you work with can help you with this. We help our clients with this all the time. It's a regular thing we do, is putting together content calendars. But here's a good checklist for you. So all of these checklists then become questions that you can turn into content. There's a couple pages on your website that we often take for granted. And the first one I want to talk about is the About Us page. When we look at Google Analytics data, it is very common for the About Us page to be a top 10 page on your website. That's extremely valuable content. But a lot of folks kind of, put a few bits of information on their About Us page and they let it go. Make sure your About Us page includes everything on this slide. And not only will you get better rankings in Google, but you'll have higher conversion rates because people want to know about the company that they're going to do business with. And it's a very, very popular page. If you have a really good About Us page, you may actually need to have subpages and have a section of About Us page content. The second page that is really, really important is the Contact Us page. It amazes me how a lot of companies take this page for granted. The Contact Us page is almost always a top 10 page on websites we visit. And this means that the user has the intent to become a lead, to become a customer. So let's give them options to reach out to you, and let's let them know that when they get to the Contact Us page that you are a legitimate business with an address, with people, with a location they could drive to or whatever. And let's make it very easy for them to contact you. Now, in user testing, people like to contact companies in different ways. Not everybody wants to call. Not everybody wants to email or submit a form. So you have to give them the options because of their preferences. In user testing, we will have people tell me directly they would never call a company. And then the next user will come in and say, I won't do business with a company that doesn't have a phone number on their website. So give them options and have an excellent Contact Us page. want to really quick cover the resources that can help you implement content marketing, inbound marketing. And without these resources, this becomes such a challenge. And I've spent the last 20 years pooling through so many different options and things to look at. And what I'm showing you on this slide are some of the best based on my 20 years of research. A few that pop to mind that are top of mind for me right now is SEMrush. Absolutely something you should look into. Screaming Frog for SEO. Google Analytics and the Google Search Console must-haves. And also, if you look at the bullet points on the right here at the bottom, where it says your brand, your site, you can actually go into Google and do searches in Google that show you how many pages have been indexed for your website. It can show you what your brand is looking like in Google. These are great tools and great resources to get a handle on inbound marketing. Well, that does it for today's webinar on rising above the digital noise. I'm going to escape from my slides here real quick and see if there's any questions. And it looks like we're good. There's no questions. So I'm going to end the webinar at this point and let you know you can always reach out to Intuitive Websites for more information, for a review of your inbound marketing, or for any general questions you have, or for a copy of the slides that you just saw. Thanks for attending the webinar.